As soon as we bumped up her calories back to that 1400 to 1600, she had a lot more energy and she ended up losing weight. Not because she was consuming more calories, but because she was... Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Today, I'm going to be explaining why sometimes you need to eat more calories in order to lose weight. But before I start, you guys know the drill. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, ding, ding, ding. And if you don't want to watch the entire video, I will be including timestamps in the description so you can skip ahead to the section that you want. Now, onto the topic at hand. A lot of people, when it comes to the topic of weight loss, they have to restrict their calories in order to lose weight. But one of the problems is a lot of people fall into the trap of believing that if a little bit of something is good, then a lot must be better. And when it comes to calorie restriction, this is not the case, and I'm going to explain why. First, let's just get this out of the way. At the end of the day, if you want to lose weight, you need to be in a caloric deficit. There's absolutely no way around that. If you are in a caloric deficit, you are going to lose weight. If you are in a caloric surplus, you are going to gain weight. And if the amount of calories that you take in is equal to that of your total daily energy expenditure, your weight is going to stay exactly the same. So you may be thinking to yourself, well, if I need to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose weight, then why are you telling me that sometimes I need to eat more calories in order to lose weight? Well, when you do extreme weight cutting, a few things are going to happen. One of the things is you are constantly going to be hungry. And when you are hungry, what's going to happen is ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, is going to be elevated. And when ghrelin is elevated, that is going to cause you to crave high calorie dense foods. And another thing with regard to ghrelin is you can only fend it off for so long. Eventually, what's going to happen is if you are in an extreme calorie deficit for a long period of time, you are eventually going to go out on a binge, and then you could put on all of the weight that you ended up losing while you were on your extreme calorie cut. So rather than doing an extreme calorie cut, you're going to be better off doing something very, very small that's more manageable and easier for you to sustain. One of the reasons why this is going to be very, very important is because when you do extreme calorie cutting, your total daily energy expenditure, which is the amount of calories that you burn throughout the day, is going to decrease. And when it comes to your total daily energy expenditure, that's going to be comprised of 4 different factors. One is going to be your BMR, or your basal metabolic rate. The other is going to be your NEAT calories, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Then you have your thermic effect of food, and you also have your exercise that you are going to be burning calories. And with regard to these 4 different factors, your basal metabolic rate is roughly going to be about 70% of the total calories that you burn throughout the day. Your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, is roughly going to be around 15% of your total calories that you burn throughout the day. Your thermic effect of food is roughly going to make up 10%. And with regard to exercise, exercise only accounts for roughly 5% of the total calories that you burn throughout the day. So if your basal metabolic rate and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis decreases, that is going to be huge, because 85% of the calories that you burn throughout the day is coming from your basal metabolic rate and your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. Now, with regard to your basal metabolic rate, one of the reasons why that is going to be lowered when you do an extreme calorie deficit is because when you go on an extreme calorie deficit, your body is going to interpret that to mean that food is scarce and you are in a state of starvation. So it is going to want to conserve energy as much as possible. And with regard to your basal metabolic rate, there is a direct correlation between your basal metabolic rate and the amount of calories that you consume. Generally, the more calories that you consume, the higher your basal metabolic rate is going to be, and the less you consume, the lower your basal metabolic rate is going to be. So if you are on a very extreme calorie deficit, then what's going to happen is your basal metabolic rate is going to decrease. And another thing, we already stated this, but ghrelin, which is your hunger hormone, is going to be elevated. That is going to cause you to crave high calorie dense foods. Another thing that ghrelin is going to do is cause you to make poor decisions, because ghrelin has been linked to poor decision making. So the chances of you eventually going out and going on a binge are going to increase. And if you do go out on a binge, the amount of food that you have in one binge can make up for the calorie deficit that you've been on for an entire week. So you could end up losing all of the progress that you've made in an entire week just on going on one binge. Now, another thing is going to be your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. This is another thing that is going to be lowered. And in fact, I'm going to share a recent example with one of my own clients. I have this one client. It is a woman in her 50s. And one of the things is she's been working with me for a few years now, and she lost a ton of weight over the last few years, and her body fat decreased significantly. And when we had her calories anywhere between 1400 to 1600, she was losing a decent amount of weight every single week. And eventually what happened was she kind of got tired of cooking all of her own food. So she decided that she wanted to go with a meal prep company. That way it would make her life a little bit easier and she wouldn't have to cook her food. Well, when she ended up doing that, the person from the meal prep company, they ended up decreasing her calories, and I was unaware of this. So A couple weeks had gone by and she didn't lose any weight, and then they decreased her calories, and then she ended up actually gaining weight the following week, and she was very, very confused why she wasn't losing weight. So I asked her, how much are you eating? And she told me that the person from the meal plan company, they ended up giving her a 1,200 calorie diet, and they had planned on decreasing her calories even more to 900 because she wasn't losing weight. Well, what I did was I ended up calling the company, I gave them a bunch of crap for it, and I told them to raise her calories up back to between 1,400 and 1,600 calories. And immediately when they did that, she ended up losing weight again the following week. Now you might ask yourself, how the hell did she lose weight even though you ended up increasing the calories? Well, because they kept decreasing her calories by so much, on 900 to 1,200 calories, this is a 140-pound woman, your energy levels are going to be very, very low. And when you have very low levels of energy, you are not going to be moving around as much. You just want to stay still and not do anything whatsoever. So by not moving around as much, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis is going to be decreased. And that, remember, is roughly 15% of your total calories that you are burning. So between the basal metabolic rate being decreased and the non-exercise activity thermogenesis being decreased, that's 85% of her total calories. And as soon as we bumped up her calories back to that 1,400 to 1,600, she had a lot more energy and she ended up losing weight. Not because she was consuming more calories, but because she was moving around a lot more, because she had much more energy. So if you do find that you are extremely tired and you're not moving around, do not decrease your calories even more if you are not losing weight, because chances are it is going to have the opposite effect of what exactly you want it to have. Because by decreasing your calories even more, you're going to be extremely tired and you're not going to want to move at all. And because you're not moving at all, you're going to burn less calories throughout the day. And aside from just negatively impacting your weight loss results, this could also have detrimental effects on your health. One of the ways that it could be detrimental toward your health is going to be through nutrient deficiencies. If you fall into the trap of constantly lowering your calories, eventually you can get to the point where you are picking certain foods that are very, very low calorie and you are avoiding other food groups together. And by avoiding certain foods, what's going to happen is you may develop nutrient deficiencies. One example is, let's say you want to pick the lowest calorie dense foods possible in order to keep yourself satiated. Well, spinach is going to be very, very low calorie dense, and so are egg whites. So if you are only eating spinach and egg whites because it's low calorie, what's going to happen is you are going to develop deficiencies because you're not going to be getting enough essential fatty acids. And another thing is, when you look at an egg, a lot of the nutrients are going to be found in the egg yolk. The white is where all the protein is, but the egg yolk, that is where all the good fats and all of the vitamins and minerals are going to be located. One example with regard to egg whites versus eggs and how it could create a nutrient deficiency is with the vitamin biotin. Biotin is found in the egg yolk. So if you are constantly eating egg whites and avoiding the egg yolk altogether, you can create a biotin deficiency in your body. And if you're not going to get biotin from the egg yolk, you are going to need to find somewhere to supplement it with in order to get that into your body. That's just one example, but there are many examples of how exactly you can create nutrient deficiencies if you start limiting the amount of calories that you consume to an extreme level. Another health consequence of decreasing your calories severely is going to be that it is going to decrease your bone density. With regard to bone density, if you restrict your calories to an excessive amount, what's going to happen is you are going to reduce your estrogen levels and also your testosterone. With regard to estrogen, you have many different types of estrogen, but estradiol is going to be one of the estrogens that helps to create and preserve bone density. And with regard to testosterone, if you have low levels of estradiol and low levels of testosterone, this can have a negative impact on your bone density. It can actually decrease your bone density. So if you are somebody who has things like osteoporosis or any issues with regard to your bones, and you severely restrict your calories, you can end up exacerbating the symptoms of your osteoporosis or whatever issue you have with regard to your bone density. Now, at this point, you may be asking, well, if I'm not supposed to restrict my calories that extreme, how much should I be in a deficit? And this is going to be dependent on a person-to-person basis. Generally, a good rule to follow is anywhere from 0.5 to 1% of your weight loss every single week is going to be a good amount to hit. So depending on what your weight is, multiply that by 0.5 or 1, and that is going to give you how much weight you should be losing in a week. And because we know that 3,500 calories is roughly equal to 1 pound of fat, what you'll do is take that number, multiply it by 3,500, and that will give you the calorie deficit that you need to be in a week in order to lose that amount. Then you just divide that number by 7, and that is going to give you the calorie deficit that you should be on a daily basis. I'm going to use myself as an example. Right now, I weigh roughly 160 pounds. So let's say it was was my goal to lose weight? Well, 0.5% of 160 pounds is going to be 0.8 pounds. So if I take 0.8 and multiply that by 3,500, that gives me 2,800. So I should be in a 2,800 calorie deficit throughout the course of a week. Now, if I divide that by 7, that is going to equate to 400. So for me, on the low end, a 400 calorie deficit would be reasonable for me if I wanted to lose weight. Now, if I wanted to lose a little bit more, the higher end of that range, if I were to do 160 pounds, multiply that by 1%, that is going to be 1.6 pounds. If I were to do 1.6 pounds times 3,500 calories, that is going to equate to a 5,600 calorie deficit over the course of a week. And if I were to divide that by 7, that would equate to an 800 calorie deficit per day. So that is roughly where I should be, anywhere from 400 to an 800 calorie deficit per day. And as soon as you have that number, you may be asking yourself, well, which one is going to be right for me? Should I go on the higher end? Should I go on the lower end? Generally, what I'd like to recommend with my patients is that you start on the lower range of that and then gradually increase the deficit until you find something that is comfortable for you and sustainable. So for myself, if I wanted to lose weight, 400 calorie deficit would be my starting point. I would start at that. If I find that I do that and that's easy and manageable, then I could gradually increase it. I could do maybe 450 deficit, maybe a 500, and keep going until I find the amount that is right for me. As soon as I find that I'm really, really hungry and I have low levels of energy, I've gone too far and I need to increase my calories a little bit more if I want to make it sustainable. Because if I don't increase it, again, ghrelin's going to be elevated. It's going to cause me to crave high calorie dense foods. And the chances that I go out on a binge is going to increase. And if I do go out on a binge, chances are I'm going to put the weight back on and I might even put more weight. So if you do want to lose weight, start slow and gradually increase until you find what level is right for you. That's pretty much it for today's video. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to smash that like button so I know to make more of these types of videos in the future. And if you're either new to the channel or haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell, as I will be uploading new videos every single day. That's it for today's video. Thanks for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.